We're back with the start of college football, and of course, we have to look towards the first game between 22nd ranked Iowa State and 17th ranked Kansas State to start out the Big 12 campaign. Both of these teams have a lot of question marks surrounding them, to be honest. There's nothing really of note to say about their quarterbacks in Becht and Johnson. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, with the way that conference is set up, they are two of the best returning quarterbacks in that conference. And maybe in the case of Avery Johnson, one of the best in the nation. So there's definitely a continuity there. They have nothing really to worry about. It's really just about getting their team over the hump. And they have lost a lot of overall defensive talent. But when you look at some of their offensive guys coming into this game, you could probably make the case that Iowa State was a little bit stronger in their backfield because they had both Carson Hansen and Abu Sama returning for the year, whereas the Wildcats also lost DJ Giddens in the draft. Now, Dylan Edwards was back, but that is just such a massive loss for them in that portion. As for their receiving cores, Noel and Higgins were pretty much just studs for that team last season. And they were going to make up a majority of the targets as it was. So it's not to say that some of the other receivers on that Iowa State squad were not slated to become better over time, but for what we see on paper, yeah, Kansas State might have had the edge. Because they had Jace Brown returning in this one. And honestly, I was shocked to see that he was still a part of the team. But through it all, even with whatever it is that you might see on the surface, you couldn't really say anything concrete about the team until they put it all out there on the field. And that's exactly what they would end up doing in Dublin on Saturday. Now, the thing is, I'm going to be honest, I did not watch a lot of the game live. I was occupied at the time. But I was tracking it on Fox Sports, and, I mean, it was pretty slow there, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what happened with my shit, but as different developments were happening, there was just a bit of a delay for some reason on my part, and I really got to get that figured out. But even if things would have been synchronized in that regard, it was a slow game overall. You know, according to a source that I'll definitely be mentioning later, said that the teams combined for like 4 fumbles in the first half of the game. Because granted, it was, a bit of inclement weather out there, so that's understandable. But, hey, that's the intrigue of the college football season right there. To start things off, you think you're getting exposed to this beautiful, pristine environment. And granted, the stadium that they rented out for this game is pretty good. It's a soccer stadium that is used by teams there. But just think about that. A ranked matchup between two Big 12 conference titans, per se. They both have a fair shot of winning the conference, let's be completely honest here. And you have them getting into an absolute slugfest to start out the year. You're right in mid-season form at that point. Now, it wasn't completely devoid of scoring. They mentioned that Avery Johnson had gotten in with a rushing touchdown earlier in the game. And Rocco Becht, to be honest, from what was going on earlier, he was doing a little bit of everything, but the count stats weren't necessarily all there for him. That would be okay, though, if they could come out and win the game. You don't always need to put up the prettiest and most eye-popping numbers. Because, honestly, with the kind of matchup that this is, these are both top contenders in the conference, and this could quite literally be a matchup that serves as a tiebreaker for at least one of the two when it comes into final seeding for who gets to play in the Big 12 title game down the line. Massive implications this early in the season, Like, you have to take that as seriously as you can. And that was certainly felt. I mean, Kansas State, from what I did watch down the stretch of the fourth quarter when things got really, really fucking good, they were uber aggressive, to say the least. Now, Iowa State, honestly, with the way that they operate on offense, they naturally had the advantage in time of possession because their running backs just offer them an opportunity to continue to grind out the clock in ways that most other teams would not in this day and age. That was certainly a strength of theirs. But Kansas State, it was fair for them to have that kind of mentality, and yet it might have come back to bite them, legitimately. Like, I get into watching the game actually live on television, and they're in the middle of a drive on which they could end up taking the lead. And this is right around like the midway point or a little past that of the fourth quarter. They get into a situation where Avery Johnson is stopped from leading the offense to a first down off of what was a third down at the time. But he's like about a few yards short. So they get into that 4th and 3. And to that point, as the graphics displayed on the scoreboard fittingly before they did what they did, they were 1 of 3 on 4th down conversions. But they were in a little bit of a dilemma here, because if you do end up getting it, I mean, you rob the Cyclones of an opportunity to get the ball back and do more damage to you that way. However, if you don't get it, because this was inside like their 35-yard line, you're giving them great field position to work with. And it just makes it exponentially more difficult for you at that point, given now they had been gashing the ball down the defense's throat all game long. There was a small sliver of a chance that you would be able to get the ball back enough times later on to overcome that deficit. And to lose the field position game in a situation like that would have proved fatal for them. But with the K-State head coach having enough trust in Avery Johnson, they decided to full send it anyway. Now understand, Avery Johnson is a full-blown scrambler. I understand. He is an elite dual threat talent, but you have to be a little bit smarter in that situation. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, you still had a decent amount of time in the fourth quarter left to punt the ball away, rely on your defense to get you a stop, and get the ball back to then strike. You didn't need it all at that particular moment in time. And yet the play call was something that, given Avery Johnson's skill set, the defense clearly saw coming. I mean, they called a straight-up quarterback zone, run play over to the left side of the field. And Avery Johnson was subsequently stopped short. Now, they would review it further because it didn't look like, from a certain angle at times, like he actually picked up that first down. But he was just mere inches short. And what do the Cyclones proceed to do on the next drive? They end up getting a touchdown, as Rocco Batts got in another one, passing on the day at that point, to help them take a 24-14 lead at the time. Now again, there was still a decent amount of time left, and it didn't stop Kansas State from immediately responding. I mean, Avery Johnson, for all of the criticism he probably got just taking it up that side of the field and running it on that fourth down conversion, he responded in the most effective way imaginable. You know, in just one play, he got it all back by firing a dime way over to the middle of the deeper portion of the field for a touchdown to this Bradley person. another returning player for them, Jerand Bradley. Yeah, just a great play overall. Like, I was just looking back at it in real time, and it was like, dude, he literally just took away most of the defense in that area with the way his eyes were situated. He wasn't eyeing Bradley down at all, but he saw the open zone, the particular point to exploit at that given moment, and he went for it. Now, one of the backs at that time was out of position and was trying his absolute best to recover. He was too late, but he was still close enough to where any sort of feasible attempt to swat the ball could have potentially affected the entire play. Yet Avery Johnson, with the touch on that pass, got it right over his head anyways. He had no chance of contesting it, and Bradley was just off and running for a touchdown to bring them back within 3. Now again, that's ideal. That's what you want in a situation like that. And maybe if the Kansas State defense was a little more reliable down this stretch of the game, things could have gone a certain way. But at the same time, for you to fail on that 4th down conversion in your own territory and not at least buy yourself the time you would need to pull off an effective comeback, because K-State had been one of the more prolific teams of last season when it came to coming back and winning games after trailing in the 4th quarter. This wasn't anything new for them. So again, I just don't really understand the decision-making process there. And it would inevitably come back to bite them in one of the slower burns imaginable. I mean, it got to a certain point where the Cyclones were just driving down the field with a combination of Hansen and Samba III. Becht was also just picking up some shorter pass attempts and getting just smaller chunks of yardage, just dinking and dunking over the field while the running backs did the load of the dirty work. And it eventually got to a point where Kansas State, getting closer and closer to the 2-minute warning of the 4th quarter, they were out of timeouts. They had Iowa State in a 4th down situation, and it was very short. But Matt Campbell and his squad ended up making a pretty good decision about it, as this other article that I'll be mentioning in just a second did state. Apparently, Rocco Becht was given 2 play call decisions by Matt Campbell at the time. And the one that ended up working to perfection was the one that he chose. It completely fooled Kansas State because in the same way that the Cyclones would have been expecting Avery Johnson to run, well, you're naturally, with the talent of those 2 running backs in that backfield, you would expect either one of them to be getting the ball up the gut and you could just easily swarm them, in theory. That's not what ended up happening because Rocco Becht would get it to Carson Hansen out wide and he would pick up 15 yards. Now, initially, when they were replaying it and checking for what was initially ruled a touchdown, I thought he scored 2, and I thought the refs were just trying to completely screw them over. But at the same time, at that point, prior to that attempt, Kansas State was out of timeouts. No matter what ended up happening, whether they scored a touchdown right then and there or whether they were short of the goal line, the ball was in their court. They could operate however they wanted. Either way, Kansas State was in a tremendous amount of danger. Because onside kicks, even if they were able to score on their own, since there aren't, like perfectly running clocks after first downs in college, you get a little time to breathe and get your play call in order and stuff like that. Even if that were to happen, you still have to rely on something as improbable as that. So right when that happened, you can have considered the game as good as done at that point. They would eventually overturn the ruling. But again, all they had to do at that point was just take a knee. And that's exactly what they did, as cheap as some people might consider that to be. I mean, why would you risk doing anything else? You've already secured the win. And that would be the final score of the game, with the Cyclones taking it 24-21 there. Again, Becht, 50% completion on 28 passes for 183 yards and 2 touchdowns, along with another rushing touchdown. Again, they don't really stand out, but he was effective. Aside from the one fumble he specifically had, they did a fine job of protecting the football. And in this game of ball control, they won it convincingly. That's what it ended up coming down to. And for him to man the offense in that way, it was exactly what they needed to win the game. That's it. As for Avery Johnson, he definitely had a tremendous game by his standards. 3 total touchdowns of his own, 70% completion, and 273 passing yards to go on with 21 on the ground. As for their receiving core, Brown led those guys in all receivers in the game with 78 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown, while Bradley had 75 yards, obviously marked mostly by the 65-yard touchdown catch. Now, again, this game is of high importance, but the Big 12 has proven time and time again that you have to expect the unexpected. Always. I mean, in 2010's college football at the time, the Big 12 was really just a conference full of chaos. Every other week, you are having one of those teams getting absolutely decimated by another Power 5 at the time opponent, and then getting into a historical slugfest with one of their own conference mates. I mean, all the different Bedlam games, the Texas Tech versus Oklahoma matchup with Mahomes and Mayfield at the time, just multiple games like that per season with absolutely no defense, top-tier offensive play in just shootout game after shootout game. Things have largely remained that way in the 2020s, and now that gets exacerbated a little bit more with realignment at this point. It's also worth noting that they went on ad nauseum about the fact that over the past 5 seasons, there have been 5 different conference champions representing the Big 12 in any iteration of the college football playoff, while no other power conference in the nation has had more than 3 different teams representing their conference at any one point over the past 5 college football playoff postseasons. Like, that is pretty nuts, to say the least. And again, one of these teams could put their names into it. Who's to say that by the end of the season, a different Big 12 team cements their place as the title contender coming out of this conference? You never really know. But as wild as that could be, things got immediately wild after the game. And obviously not on the part of Iowa State fans. I mean, naturally, they're going to do whatever it is they want to do. You can imagine that with you being in Ireland at the time, some of these people probably went to different pubs and stuff like that and just get absolutely lit out of their minds. I can tell you that right now. Even as a person who doesn't do anything like that. That's just how it goes around there. There's no stopping that, all right? They were absolutely elated to come all the way there from wherever it is that they reside to see their team get the close victory like that. But the turmoil would come from the Kansas State side, and more specifically, close relatives, the father and older brother of Avery Johnson, because apparently, according to this article from CBS Sports right here, the quote would state, the father and brother of Kansas State quarterback Avery Johnson released a joint statement Sunday after their footage of their post-game fight became public in the aftermath of the Wildcats' season-opening loss to Iowa State in Dublin, Ireland. A video clip of the incident shared on social media shows Johnson's father straddling his older brother on the ground and several Kansas State fans working to break up the melee. I'm not gonna lie, they kind of put it a little bit, they were a little bit generous with their wording here, because I did see that clip, and let's just say that Avery Johnson's father in this situation, like, he was grabbing his brother straight by the shirt, trying to lift him up off the ground. I don't think I would call that straddling at all. He was trying to choke his ass out. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I do have, a decent amount of viewpoints on this, but I would express the two that stand out to me the most. On one hand, PR team, and maybe it's warranted, they were so quick about this shit. Now, I understand it. Like, Avery Johnson is definitely a person reining in NIL deals at this point of time, and he's arguably the face of the team, maybe one of the more widely known players in the entire sport. To have something like this be associated with your name, it's obviously going to get talked about, and any sort of marketing talent around you is going to want to do whatever it is they can to disassociate you from that immediately, or just qualm all of that before it gets out of control. So it's understandable why they would be that on the ball like that. I understand it. But from another standpoint, all right, because another article from Fox Sports, I believe, like, they address it is, them having a little bit of bickering before getting into the physical violence there. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, like, yes, the physical aspect of it looks tremendously bad. So I totally get where the PR team would be coming from. But at the same time, if we were just talking about them bickering at each other, well, that kind of shit happens all the fucking time. So there would be no reason for you to blow that out of proportion. I mean, hell, other fans are going to do that to each other, and they're not going to really get a lot of flack for it. But again, the name amplifies that coverage, whether it's good or bad. It would seem that they're a little bit genuine about it, but there is an element of marketing within that statement. I can guarantee you right now. Hopefully you don't have something like that repeatedly happening. I would hope that they've actually learned from this. Because again, like, yes, Avery Johnson is a part of that family, of course, but he is only one person. So it is a little, again, unfair as it may be, because he's not responsible for those actions that they are committing in an entirely different area of the stadium. But again, it is what comes with the territory. Hopefully they're able to move past it and just be wary of who you're being surrounded by. Because again, I'm sure this was just a random person recording them getting into that spat with each other. But those things can spread like wildfire quickly. And, if you don't get that statement out, who's to say that talking heads aren't on these shows right now discussing the matter? Who's to say that, honestly, because I haven't really gotten into that. But there are probably talking heads who have already covered this in an interesting manner at this point of time. There's nothing truly stopping them from taking up their own interpretations of the situation. And that is the scary part about shit like that. So you just have to be recognizant of that if you're him. Speaking of Kansas, how about those Jayhawks? I promise you I'm never going to say that again. They would play against Fresno in a later game that I actually was down to watch at least the fair portion of it. Kansas is in their own situation when it comes to running backs. They've gotten some transfers over, but obviously losing Devin Neal was going to hurt tremendously. Still, the core guy, Jaylen Daniels, has been there for ages now, and he still remains there, being the starter of this game. So as long as they got him, I guess they believe that they have a chance to contend. And I mean, shit, they also, have so much faith in their team that they went out this offseason and rebuilt this stadium. Like, I didn't know that it was $450 million worth, as it says here, but they just kept on showing all of these different, trailers surrounding the opening of it during the game. And I mean, I guess by the way it ended up, they had all right to. It wasn't looking so good for Kansas early on, though. E.J. Warner, who is actually the son of Kurt Warner, by the way, which I did not know initially before even cutting on the game. He started out guns blazing. He completed something like his first 6 passes in the ball game, led Fresno State to a scoring drive very early on. So it was a bit more contested that way. Now, at that point, Jaylen Daniels had already gotten in his bag a little bit. And we'll get to Jaylen Daniels in a second, but I do want to look at Fresno State more so first. Because not even necessarily in a play-by-play manner, just looking at it from an overall lens. They used to be a pretty big name in the Mountain West Conference, and honestly, who's to say that they still don't assert themselves as one of the best teams in that conference by the end of the year before moving over to the Pac-12 next season. That's next season. I'm getting too far off topic already. Well, let's just put it like this. E.J. Warner certainly is going to need a lot of work. The entire team after that drive just crumbled completely. Like, they could not get anything going. And maybe that's a testament to how the Kansas defense was operating. Oh, they were off fucking perks in this game, man. They were getting all over everyone on that team. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Like, their rushers in this game averaged just 1.3 yards per carry. Now, again, some of that includes the fact that E.J. Warner lost 23 yards off sacks. And that's my next point. As soon as that pressure got towards him, man, he just didn't know what to do. All of his throws looked incredibly rushed after that point. And for him to have a 6-6 start, then go for just 12 of his next 23 passes over the rest of the game, and with just some ugly misses too. Like, you're gonna always have coaches who truly rely and have enough faith in their quarterbacks to try to work them back into a ball game. If they appear to be struggling, right, they're not always going to look towards the plays that are much harder for a quarterback to diagnose, okay? What they're going to do sometimes is they're going to call plays that sort of build up a new rhythm for the overall offense. tune-up plays, if you will. We always talk about tune-up games, but naturally you're just looking for those routine ones if you are a struggling quarterback that will just help you get right and get back into a reasonable sort of operation with the team that you're running. So tell me why on multiple occasions, again, Fresno's head coach is calling these tune-up plays specifically to get E.J. Warner back in pretty good condition in this ball game. And yet, the amount of pressure that was sent his way had him so rattled to the point where he was either overthrowing his receivers by a mile or just underthrowing it completely to where they had absolutely no chance of getting their hand on the ball at all. Tell me why. I think one of the plays to open up the second half for them on a drive that eventually resulted in a fumble. You have one of the shortest imaginable passes, an RPO pass, a pretty routine play in college football. You throw it at the receiver's feet, and you expect them to come down with that. At that point, it was just a wrap for them. And Fresno State, unfortunately, was never able to recover, and it's not even like this wasn't happening on both sides. I mean, I saw Jalen Daniels literally get murked on the field on multiple occasions, man. Now, again, Jalen Daniels compared to E.J. Warner is a multi-year veteran in college football. So, naturally, he's going to be able to make the tougher passes. But tell me why this man, on back-to-back plays, in a second quarter drive in this ball game, tell me why this man literally is calling plays where his linemen are supposed to be picking up at least one free rusher on a play as he's dropping back to pass. The motherfuckers don't even handle their assignments correctly, and now he has two free rushers coming from both sides of the line, sandwiching him. And he still gets an accurate enough pass out of his hands for a first down. The amount of times that shit like that happened over the course of the game. And yet Jalen Daniels was able to hang in there, take the pressure, and find a read that was right there for the taking. That kind of mentality just shone through for the entire team. I mean, yes, they did have some setbacks, naturally, with a couple of their running backs here. But even they weren't half bad in this one. Everyone contributed on both sides of the ball. I mean, one of these defenders even came up with one of the nastier interceptions you'll ever see. And he was definitely feeling himself after that. They were just all in E.J. Warner's head at that point. Meanwhile, Jalen Daniels, he didn't let the pressure phase him at all. They ran a pretty sound offense. And, by the time the fourth quarter came, they slowed down a little bit there. But they didn't really feel the need to continue gashing him like that. Maybe they just wanted to show him a little mercy, I guess. I don't know. Either way, Kansas, yes, this Kansas team in 2025 managed to beat the Bulldogs 31-7 in their season opener in their newly built stadium. It's a pretty interesting turn for Kansas football here, and they were all feeling it. They had, little images of the kids in there cheering them on. Younger kids who probably don't even understand just how terrible Kansas football has been over the past decade and a half. You also had other fans in there just holding up the Rock Chalk signs and Go Jayhawks signs and shit like that. And again, a lot of that is cool. That's what makes college football unique, is that, no matter what kind of state you're school is in, and I mean in the sense of performance, not necessarily like a geographical way. But no matter where their standing currently is, these fans are just die hard to the very end of the season and the next, and so on and so forth. They just don't run out of energy. And they are going to ensure, even if they're at a rougher point, that when they win, everyone is truly going to have a great time. At that point, and in all of the days to follow said victory, it's truly a sight to see. However, this is Kansas football we're talking about, right? Something just tells me, because it almost happens all the time, all right? Something tells me they're gonna fuck something up. They almost always do. And I mean, over the past few years, they've still been a team that has been on the lower end. They've gotten close to bowl eligibility a few times, and they had one particular season, I think, that they were on pace for that. But Jalen Daniels went down with an injury, and after that, they just kind of crumbled. Nevertheless, you just want to see more consistency from the Kansas squad. This has always been a problem for them, especially with Daniels being there. He's got the talent to be a high NFL prospect. But again, those flaws bear, a bit of reasoning for why he hasn't even so much as entered the NFL draft over the past few years, even when he's been eligible for it. And the way their schedule works, I mean, they've got some tough stretches of games, man. Obviously, the Big 12 competition is going to hurt, but you're talking about them facing off against Missouri in literally just a little over a week on September 6th. And then you have back-to-back ball games against Texas Tech and K-State. Not to mention UCF before those two games kick in. Again, I do not count on Kansas going undefeated, because that would just be completely fucking delusional. And I promise you, if that were ever to happen for Kansas football, they would kind of go out in the same way that Florida State did. They go out the same way, because it's going to be hard to convince people that Kansas, even if they were to get some of these top 25 wins, it is hard for people to really believe and really just really stomach Kansas being a college football playoff team in 2025. There's no fucking shot. I'm going to shut that down right now. But at the very least, you're looking for them to give these teams a run for their money and have at least a bowl-eligible season, maybe an 8-win, 9-win year. That would be them over-exceeding expectations, but it's about time. Like, you have a roster that is pretty fairly constructed. And you have a leader in Jalen Daniels who's been there for long enough. The time is now for them, or never. And I guess you could say that the SEC is kind of feeling the same way, because let's just put it like this, man. They haven't been up to much of anything over the past couple of seasons in college football. Let's just put it like that. I mean, they had a few strong teams miss out on the CFP last year, and then in back-to-back years, Big Ten champions have emerged as the national ones. Obviously, fuck Michigan, and I could really waste the time in this video covering all of the specific violations that they are now facing as a result of the investigation on the Connor Stallion shit. Let's just put it like this. To summarize it just very quickly, because I don't even, I'm really trying to focus on what the SEC is talking about here. But since I did bring it up, in summary, in short, Stallions is facing 10-year show cause for his violations. Jim Harbaugh is in the NFL, but is still facing 8 years of show cause. And Sharon Moore is also dealing with another self-curated 2-game suspension this season as a result of everything that happened. They are also paying a massive fine, and nothing has necessarily come of their title run potentially being vacated, but there are still pretty strong advocates out there who want that to happen. I mean, again, it's hard to call that legitimate. Like, even with me just talking out of my ass, like, it is legitimately hard for people to come to terms with the fact that they won this in a blatantly unfair way. But nevertheless, the SEC, where do they factor into this video? Well, they are now going to elevate their conference game schedule, as they will increase it to 9 games in 2026. Now, according to an actual statement from their website in Greg Sankey, adding a 9th SEC game underscores our university's commitment to delivering the most competitive football schedule in the nation. This format protects rivalries, increases competitive balance, and paired with our requirement to play an additional power opponent, ensures SEC teams are well prepared to compete and succeed in the college football playoff. Now, this article goes on to explain that conference play in the SEC was a little bit looser in earlier days of its existence, and it gradually increased every few years or so. But 9 games is definitely a massive step forward for them, because it's been something that other conferences, like the Big Ten, have done. But I suppose that with them having an 8-game schedule in that regard, maybe that, they feel, in a way, was used against them when it came to determining all of the specific teams to get a bid in the CFP last year. And I suppose that with implementing this, they don't want to leave anything up to chance. They want to ensure that as many deserving teams from their conference get a proper and just look at entering the college football playoff in years down the line. As this article from the Bleacher Report also states, they aren't the only conference looking to boost their conference play, because they state that ACC leaders previously said that they would likely follow suit if the SEC moved to a 9-game conference schedule, per Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger. End quote. So it probably shouldn't come as a surprise if you hear something in the next few days about the ACC doing the exact same thing. Obviously, the 8-game conference schedule for them had been around for a while. Bleacher Report article also states that it had been in position since 1992. But there is one aspect of this that I can truly get behind, and it's the required game per year for non-conference and power conference opponents. I absolutely love it. With some of the home games that have been announced over the past few years, just think about it. I mean, this Ohio State-Texas game, this Ohio State-Georgia game that's supposed to be coming in play a few seasons down the line, I believe 2027, and a lot of other teams, Notre Dame's been involved in it, etc., etc. They've been scheduling this stuff over the past few years, and honestly, those may have been just, a few signs of something like this potentially being implemented. It does help things become far more competitive. Agreed. And it also gives both fans of their respective conferences to back up their talk, because everybody who is a massive SEC fan wants to talk about how the conference is superior and truly emphasize the motto, it just means more. Well, okay, prove it. Prove it. You haven't in a couple years, and this is a what have you done for me lately type of system. They ain't been on shit. I can tell you that right now. So, what do you got? Prove that you can do it when it counts in the regular season against a strong opponent in another conference. And maybe you'd get a little more respect from time to time from other parties once you are able to find yourselves in the playoffs in a similar position. Also, with the way that so many, because some of the fans of these SEC teams are literally just bandwagons, not gonna lie to you. That's for every major team out there. That's fair. I mean, obviously, like, Ohio State fans are, again, being one myself, I can acknowledge that there are a ton of bandwagons in there. You probably wouldn't be surprised that a lot more in an already wide fan base have emerged since they won earlier this year. I wouldn't be surprised by it. I'll be the first to admit. Every major team in college football has at least a good percentage of their fan base that are just bandwagons and haven't necessarily supported them through all of their rougher points of time. But the way in which these people from these SEC schools were complaining about being left out of the CFP. Oh man, they have literally been begging for shit like this. That's essentially what you're asking for. You're asking for the CFP selection committee to, again, give your school a thorough look in terms of whether or not they should be given a spot in the CFP for that specific year. That is the perfect way to summarize it. That is exactly what you're looking for. And now you got it. At least, again, starting next year. And obviously, with the Ohio State and Texas game in just 4 days. I can't wait for that. So, again, it's not going to be perfect. It should help them kind of have a better understanding of the way things are working for all these teams and go from there as to deciding who gets in and who gets left off of the CFP. But at the same time, we all know that the criteria constantly changes from year to year. So, again, are they really going to give a game like Texas versus Ohio State? Are they going to give that the weight it truly deserves for the SEC school in question? The same way as a different top 25 matchup between a different pair of power conference opponents would be weighted. In theory, it should, because the SEC and the Big Ten are again, even with them being part of the power conferences, they stand out as two of the more prolific power conferences, if not the two most prolific power conferences in the nation right now. You could look at any metric you want. You could look at winning percentage. You could look at championships. Do whatever you must. Big Ten and SEC are probably flooding a wide number of those Listen. So it should be in theory. But again, are they actually going to apply it like it is intended? That is the unknown part, and we really won't be able to find that out until we have ourselves this situation in the next football season. But for now, it's important to just take in this one. And boy, to start this one off, there are just massive games, and pretty much every single day a game is played. I mean, bruh, you got fucking Boise State versus South Florida on Thursday. You got just game after game after game could produce a lot of bangers. But, obviously, again, fuck Michigan. And the fact that these niggas are playing New Mexico and you got the nerve to tell me, oh, they're going to start Bryce Underwood. Like, I don't fucking care. Of course he's going to ball out against New Mexico. It's New Mexico. Same thing with Penn State, man. Fucking Nevada, bro. Like, are we fucking serious right now? But again, leave it to the best team in the conference to be playing a tough, gritty opponent who literally matched up against them in the conference, semifinals rather, of the college football playoff last year, and did what they did to them. Leave it up to them. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.